We're here today to talk about tools for increasing BRG and ERG engagement, a way to make your ERG thrive through communications and programming. Hello and welcome. I'm Ryan Wilson. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the Director of Corporate Relations for the Chamber, the Greater Houston Chamber of Commerce, if you're not familiar with us. I want to acknowledge our Executive Administrator, Maureen Mayori, who is on today helping with all of our logistics. And also a shout out to our co-founder, president, and CEO, Tammy Wallace, who is joining us today as well. Before I get into the content of today, though, just want to let you all know that today is being recorded. So you will be able to watch this later on our YouTube channel and go back and see some of our other lunch and learns that we have begun to offer this year. If you want to go to the next slide, a little bit about the Greater Houston LGBTQ plus Chamber of Commerce. We have some folks joining us from North Texas, so I just want to introduce y'all to Houston. If you're not familiar with us, we say that we stand at the intersection of business and community, and we are here to serve the Greater Houston area, but we realize that through virtual technologies, we are able to help support the work being done all across Texas and beyond. Next slide. This program is part of our Workplace Alliance, which is specifically for our impact partners that are members of the Chamber that invest in us. They are usually our corporate partners, but sometimes they're also nonprofits and community organizations and hospitals. They're investing in us in a way that really makes an impact. And the Workplace Alliance creates a space for those ERG and BRG leaders, affinity groups, and also those doing DEI programming. If anyone's trying to move the needle internally for LGBT inclusion, we want to make sure that you have a space to come together, learn, share, network. And so this is one of our programs today. The next slide, I do want to acknowledge some folks on the call with us. We have launched a Workplace Alliance Council, and in the next few months, we'll be working with these council members from across various industries that are represented in the Houston area, from banking to legal, supply chain and hospitality to travel and technology. We're grateful for the folks that are represented on our council. And if you click the link in the chat, you'll be able to learn more about them and read their bios. Next slide. Chamber does a ton of events throughout the year. There's a QR code on your screen that you can scan or click the link for our calendar that'll be in the chat. Just a reminder that to utilize our calendar throughout the year to help supplement your own ERG or BRG's calendar of events. We have things like Drag Bingo every month. We have other events that you can attend and represent your companies at. So we'd love to see you at more Chamber events. Next slide. Also, we are very excited to talk about the Workplace Alliance Summit that will be happening on Thursday, September 12th. It's going to be a day-long learning on networking opportunity, and we have sponsorship and table information now available on our website, as well as individual tickets are going on sale now with an early bird rate. So snag that early bird rate while you can. There'll be virtual and in-person learning opportunities, although the in-person will last throughout the day. Virtual will only be for the first half of the day. So we encourage you to come and be in person. And this is right now limited to impact partners within the Chamber. So we want to make sure that we are recruiting from the folks that are doing this work and invested in the Greater Houston Chamber. If you can hit the next slide, our guest speaker will be Jason Patria, who is going to be leading a panel of folks in the morning. He's going to then train us how to think like a CEO and really try to use your ERG or BRG to help drive results for your company and then show value. So particularly in this era of funding cuts and some companies wondering what's the value of DEI, we really want to help support you all and send you home with a mindset that DEI is worth investing in, and how can you help your companies grow from that. Next slide. And there is special communication from the Chamber on a regular basis for events like this. So we want to make sure that you and your ERG leadership are on the right listservs for the Chamber. So please reach out to me so that we can make sure to update your databases, our databases, with your correct contact info, particularly throughout the year as you all may hold leadership changes folks come and go, elections are held. We want to make sure that we're constantly keeping you all updated correctly. So work with me to help make sure that you're getting the right information throughout the year. Next slide. And there are sponsorship opportunities for all kinds of events throughout the chamber, just like sponsoring these webinars or sponsoring our Workplace Alliance Summit that's coming up. Or if it's just like drag bingo and y'all want to help support the work of the chamber or get your company's information out there, feel free to reach out to me at any point if your company is looking to invest more in our work and also raise your visibility. Next slide. And like I mentioned, this virtual lunch and learn will be on our YouTube. We also have one from March that was about transgender awareness in the workplace and allyship. And we'll also be doing one in November that looks at really advancing workplace inclusion through the lens of advocacy and what ways we can make a difference in the community around us. So save the date for that one. And next slide. So let's get to why we're here. We are here today to welcome our speaker, Aimee Broadhurst, who is the founder of Inclusive Spaces and right now located here in Houston, in our Houston area. So she is available to work with you all and your groups beyond today's programming. She has a great book out that's a handbook for ERGs of all kinds, not just limited to LGBT ERGs, and even a companion workbook. So I'm going to turn it over to Aimee because that's the real reason you all are here today. So take it away, Aimee.
Thank you, Ryan. I really appreciate this, and I'm so happy to see all of you there, all of you here today. As Ryan said, my name is Aimee Broadhurst, and the book that I wrote is for all ERGs. I have to tell you that I have a special affinity in my heart for LGBTQ plus ERGs. I was actually the first ally to lead an LGBTQ plus ERG at a Fortune 500 company. Actually, it's a Fortune 50 company. So I've been an ally for pretty much as long as I've been alive, I think. I have 3 sisters, and they're all gay. And so I'm the only straight one in the family. And that's actually how I got my husband, but that's another story for another day. What we're here to talk about today has to do with communications and engagement. Now, I know that communications with ERGs and across ERGs can be really difficult sometimes, especially when you're trying to figure out, okay, how do we communicate with folks that are not necessarily have the same access that others have. And so I don't know why this is not going to what I need it to, but let me see if that works. There we go. So this is what we're going to talk about today, making your ERG, BRG thrive through communications and programming. And again, this is me. All I ask for today is that you be present and engaged. Of course, keep yourself on mute when you're not speaking. We are going to have a couple of breakout sessions followed by some chat sessions, so that what I want you all to do is to leave here with the knowledge and some tools that you can take with you to use with your ERGs or BRGs as you're beginning to try to increase the level of communications, maybe improve your communications, and also improve your engagement through communications. And I don't ask that you keep questions until the end. If you have a question that pops in your head while we're doing stuff, if you'll just put it in the chat, I will try to bring that question in as we're going through. So first of all, let's talk about how we communicate, and market. Now, I think a lot of people feel like, why do I have to market my ERG? Well, it kind of comes with the communications. And if you're trying to get folks to join your ERG, or you want to let folks across the organization know what your ERG is doing, also, if you want to let folks externally know what your ERG is all about, that's the market piece. But today we're really going to focus on the communications piece. So a couple of things about communications. The most important thing about communicating is knowing who your audience is. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit and actually have a breakout session. You have 8 seconds. All right. I don't know how many of you watched Ted Lasso, but they talked about the goldfish and the goldfish's attention span. Goldfish have an attention span of 9 seconds. Humans have attention spans of 8 seconds. So we have less attention span than a goldfish. So whatever you're putting in front of people, you've got to get their attention pretty immediately. You want to keep whatever you're doing communication-wise, you want to keep that simple. But you want to make sure that you're creative. Again, sometimes this can be difficult because you have folks with the brand of your company, and sometimes you have to be within brand guidelines. My recommendation is that you make sure that you have someone from your brand team who's aligned to your ERGs to help make sure that everything's brand compliant and you don't get in trouble. And then last but not least, your subject lines are key. That goes back to you have 8 seconds. So this is a communication toolkit that I developed, and you will see what the desired outcome is here, the role of the communicator, how to use the toolkit, and then all of the things that are asterisks there are actually part of my companion workbook. And so those templates are all available in my companion workbook. Today, we're going to focus on a couple of templates. The first one I want to focus on is the ERG stakeholder definition and messaging. To put this more simply, this is really an audience analysis. So if you look across this, you have 6 columns. You have your audience, who they are, your key messages, what you want your audience to know, what do they need to know, so what? Why should they care anything about what you're telling them? You want to do your unique audience facts, so the demographics of your audience, geographic location, experience level, etc. What do you want them to do as a result of this communication? And then your communication preferences and channels. Now, what I mean by this is what is the best way to reach your audience? It might be social media, it might be email, it might be bulletin boards. If we're talking about executives, it might be a much more high touch communication. But these are things that are really important for you to know. So what I'm going to give you here is an example. What I suggest that you do is not do this as an individual ERG. I suggest that as an ERG council, or if you have communication folks in each of your ERGs, have them all come together and do this one time. So who are all the audiences that you need to communicate with? What are their unique audience facts? And what are their communication preferences and channels? What that will give you is the beginnings of any communication that you want to do. Because if you have that information, you can simply copy that over and then use that document to fill in your key messages, your so what, and your call to action. So in the end, it will save you a lot of time, and it will also help you make sure that you are getting to people in a way that they are going to receive it, in a way that they are going to be able to understand it, and perhaps in a way that they're going to be able to pass it on to other folks that are maybe in their demographic, in their geographic location, in their experience level within your company, etc. So let's take a look at an example. So this is an example of just one audience group. So the audience group here is ERG members. The key messages are the LGBTQ plus ERG will be staffing a booth at the Charlotte Pride Festival. Okay, well, so what? Why should they care about this? Because it's an opportunity to show support for the communities we serve, and it demonstrates the community's commitment to DEI. So what are any unique audience facts here? This particular group of ERG members do not have regular access to a computer or email. What is the call to action? You want folks to volunteer and attend. You want them to invite friends and family. So what are their communication preferences? Well, for this group that doesn't have regular access to a computer or email, their preferences might be bulletin boards in break rooms or some kind of internal social media that you have within the company. Maybe you have Microsoft Teams that they have access to. Maybe you have an app, something like that, but you want to make sure that you know what their preferences are. So what I'd like to do now is to go into a breakout session, and I want you to take this information and as a group, first of all, decide on somebody who is going to write things down and be the spokesperson for the group. Want you to go into the breakout rooms. You're going to be in there for 5 minutes. I know it's not a lot of time, but it's enough for you to get familiar with this tool. And then after that 5 minutes, we're going to come back. And I just want to hear any aha moments that any of you had within your breakout groups. So Maureen is going to send you into your breakout session or your work session, and you're going to be in there for 5 minutes. So we will see you when you get back. Okay, it looks like folks have slowed popping in here, so I think everybody's back. So what I'd like to do is, we had 6 rooms, and so I'm just going to call on each room, and whoever's the spokesperson for that room. Just, did you have any aha moments? Did you find this useful? Was it confusing? Just, anything about this particular exercise that you've done. So I'm going to start in the middle with room 3. You can take yourself off mute.
So this was Brittany, Jennifer, Josh, Nathan, and Susan.
That's helpful because I didn't know which room we were in. So thank you.
Okay.
Y'all are good. So I think that first of all, love the tool. The great tool. I think what was interesting was talking about the audience and the audience facts. So we had a couple different types of ERGs represented in our breakout room.
Okay.
And talking about how many of the audience members are part of the community itself versus allies of some kind or another, which I think would be extremely useful to targeting the messaging to have a call for action that makes sense and making sure, I guess, we're kind of meeting the audience where they are. I can see where that's going to be hugely helpful. So that was kind of our takeaway, was really focusing in on kind of that audience and unique audience facts columns is going to be critical to making sure that the other columns on the worksheet are useful and develop some meaningful communication.
Fantastic. Thanks, Josh. So Maureen, would you let us know who's in room 6?
Yes, that was Julie, Karina, and Sarah.
I don't think we
this is
actually
Sarah.
officially picked a spokesperson, so oops.
Yeah,
you
no,
can
I was
be-
just gonna
Go, Julie.
Sarah, go
go
ahead.
for it, Julie. Nope, you got it.
Okay. I would say that we actually spent most of our time talking about how this is helping us figure out how to cater communications to the it not just necessarily the method of communication, but the style of the communication. The fact that some people are highly detail oriented, want all of the information. Some people want the bullets and they won't read if you've put too much in there. How do we construct things so that they'll see it? How do, as the aha that hit me as the session was ending was one of the people in my group said that she sends herself a draft so that she can look at it on her phone and see how it looks on the phone if she opens it that place. And I have access to my email on my phone and I never thought to do that.
That's great. I love that idea.
Yeah, the fact that most people, how are most people consuming this? Not just is it email, but are they email on desktop, email on phone, all of that stuff. That was really great.
Okay, awesome. All right, let's go to room 1.
That was Chris, Gracie, and Melissa.
Okay, yeah, so this is Gracie. We tried to really focus in on each part of the tool. It's a great tool. I really like it, and definitely will be trying to use it within our ERG. We didn't get a chance to go through everything, but
Okay.
one of the first on the first column we thought about also was the other ERG groups that we can contact and how we would contact them.
Okay.
And because I think it's important really to also come together as a one, like I think you mentioned using this for all of the ERGs, and just where it's kind of already there and it's not something that you have to recreate every time. So another thing we talked about was why it would be important. You know, a lot of ERGs, we want to make sure that we're giving them something to be there for, right? So
Right.
supporting an allyship, creating camaraderie, and then professional development. And then, so yeah, we didn't get a lot, we talked a lot about different things, but we didn't get through the whole document, but that's kind of like where we were at.
Okay. And it's fine if you didn't get through the whole document. I know it was just 5 minutes, but it sounds like it was a good thought starter for y'all, which is
Absolutely, yeah, it was
Yeah.
really great.
good. All right, how about room 4, sorry.
That was Lynette, Robin, Sarah, and Shane.
Do you have a switch?
Hey, I can go ahead and speak to it. I think we mainly lasered in on the communication aspect.
Okay.
Sarah mentioned that she works in healthcare, so getting some of the healthcare members who don't have access to a computer is really vital. She talked about QR codes. I think that's also just like a really important point. So I think we're all like probably in like some type of management role, so it's easy to kind of forget that a lot of people don't have access to work emails or computers. So if we really want to create like a collaborative, inclusive environment, like we really need to be thinking about everyone within the organization, not just people that are kind of at a corporate level. So
Exactly. That's great. And I like the QR code idea too. I know some folks that have used that and it has been really helpful, especially with folks who don't have that regular access to computers. Okay, group 5.
April, James, Jamie, and Jason.
Okay, I'll volunteer. We also did
Okay.
not identify a speaker. I, we talked about it quite a bit, but I think one of the takeaways for me personally was the I've used something very similar, like a stakeholder management plan, for big projects that I've worked on, and so this is a good project management tool. And I don't know, I think it's just a reminder that, oh, well, this can also apply to our ERG work and how we want to show up. So I think that was just kind of the big takeaway, that this is a tool that I'm quite familiar with, and I just never thought to use it in this capacity.
Yeah, so it's funny that you mentioned that because in my prior life, I was actually in corporate communications, and I actually developed this tool as a part of communication projects that I was working on, and then I brought it over to the ERG. So, all right, and last but not least, group 2.
So, speaking for room 2, we actually had a lot of experienced communication people already in the group. So,
Okay.
For us, a lot of this was stuff that we kind of had already been using.
Okay.
But we did find that this tool really does help focus the point of the heart of our messages, like really going through and saying, okay, what are we really trying to focus on? Like the key message, I think, really kind of stuck out to a lot of us. Because sometimes we tend to put a lot of messages in one just to kind of help keep the number of emails we're sending out down. The other thing that we really did kind of have an aha moment was the communication preference, and kind of matching that up with either the audience, because it helps match the tone with the format. So if it's something more formal, making sure like it's going to be email, it has to be more formal for the executives, or if it's more informal, maybe it goes through Slack or something like that. And then we saw this as a really good tool for people who are just getting into the communications realm and maybe not understanding or not being able to think about these kind of thoughts. And it's a really good educational tool just in general for people who are brand new to the idea of communications and how to really format this. So we really liked it.
Yep. Thank you. And that's really the idea behind this and this whole communication toolkit, because you're not always going to have someone who is a communications professional or has a lot of experience in communications who might be leading the communications for your ERG or BRG. And so this gives the opportunity to help someone who maybe has a little bit of experience or really wants to do, work on this as a part of their professional development. This kind of gives them the tools and templates that they need in order to be able to do that and feel like they're being successful. Okay. And as far as soft copies of the tools for today, they will be made available. We're going to put a link in the chat, which is a link to my website. If you just go there and fill out the information, and in the message, just put the Greater Houston LGBTQ+ Chamber, and I will send you soft copies of all the documents so that you can have editable versions of these. Okay, so for those of you who are communication professionals, please don't come at me. I know this is a simple communication plan, but I think it's important for, again, folks who might not have a lot of communication experience. And we all have to remember that most everybody that's doing this kind of work, I used to call my work my day job and my gay job. And so in my book, I call it my day job and my passion job, or paid job and passion job. So this is not something that people do full time. And in many cases, it's not something they're getting paid to do. So this is, again, a very short and simple communication plan template that folks can use to create a communication plan. I know a lot of times people are like, we don't have time to do all this planning, but I promise you, if you will use the stakeholder analysis template that I gave you with the messaging, and then you will have a communication plan template, whether you use this one or something you already have, to create that audience analysis. And then how are you communicating with these folks, and what's the timing of that? So this is just an example. These are the tabs or the columns: task, owner, and send and post date. Again, this is an editable version. You'll have that, and you can change these to whatever you want. But here's an example, and this is Black History Month for a Black professionals group, ERG. And so this is just, what I want to emphasize here is this is the way that a lot of people do communication planning. I know folks within communications as a profession try to do this, which is start with the end and go backwards. So what are your big communications? What are the things that are going to be going out about your event or your month that are going to be talking about it? And then who within the organization do you need to start talking about this to prior to anything going out to the masses? I know you all know, as ERG leaders, there are folks that you need to make sure are in the know before things start going out. So I recommend that if you're using this tool, that you start with the end in mind. And yes, that is from Stephen Covey. And yes, I'm dating myself. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. But start with the end in mind on your communication plan. So I'm not going to go through this, but you can see how things like the DEI Global Council, the DEI office are part of this. Executive sponsors are part of this plan. Letting your members know what's going on ahead of time. An article maybe on your company's intranet site about things that are coming. And then during that month of Black History Month for this particular ERG, they're going to have lots of social media posts to the company's social media handles throughout the month. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes to go back into your groups with this communication plan template. I don't, again, expect you to create a communication plan, but if you just can use this to kind of think through how you would create a communication plan, maybe think of an event or project that your ERG has already done, or maybe perhaps is going to be working on, and how you could use this communication plan, and even how you could use it in conjunction with the tool that you just used. So we're going to put you into rooms. Please look what room you're in if you can, and decide who's going to be your spokesperson. And we'll bring you back in 5 minutes. Okay, everybody. As everybody starts to get back in, this is great. I am not going to go room by room on this one. If you have something from your room that you want to let us know, if you could use the hand raising, and we can call on you. If you don't have anything to share, that's fine. But if you do, I'd like to give you an opportunity to do that. Okay, Maria.
So yeah, we talked about really using the two tools together and really using the communication plan to really building up who, what, and when we're going to be sending those communications. And we were speaking strictly about like Pride Parade kind of stuff.
Right.
But then using the ERG to then format and create those communications, and then determining, okay, based on, okay, we need to ask for volunteers. Okay, that volunteer communication, who's going to be the audience? How are we going to communicate that? And then using that worksheet to kind of link those two together.
That's great. And I will tell you another advantage of that stakeholder messaging tool is that, you know, if you have events that you're doing year after year, if you develop that with all your key messages and stuff, then you have something to start with for the next year. You don't necessarily have to repeat it, but you at least have something to start with for the next year as far as what you sent out the previous year to all your different audience groups. So that's great. Nathan.
I'm Nathan from Cisco Corporation. I would just say what we've done at Cisco is we've looked within the membership list of our colleague resource group to see what expertise lies within the day jobs of folks who are within the group. So we've launched pretty major documents to all colleagues at Cisco, and we found that we had somebody within our membership list who works within Cisco's change management office. And so they helped us put together a framework just like what you've shown, Aimee, and helped us connect with the communications team and any internal teams that we didn't have existing relationships with to make sure that we got our projects across the finish line.
Great, great. Have another raised hand here. Let's see. Is that Lynette?
It is. Hello.
Hi.
So just to kind of tack on to what Nathan said, we found ourselves in a similar structure, and I started it with I'm the chair of our women's group, so I came in, and being in IT and a stickler for project management sometimes, whether I like it or not, and we quickly learned that everybody was just kind of all over the place, or it was all of the work was going to one or two people. And in my mind as a leader too, I'm like, well, first of all those other ones who have volunteered now feel like they have no value.
Yeah.
And they're not contributing to something that they definitely have a passion for, otherwise they wouldn't be in it, right?
Yep.
So we need to give that back. And in addition to that, make it so that it is not an overwhelming contribution of your time. So the structure you use here and just the communication plan is a great tool that should be used there and elsewhere. We actually added a project manager to our committee, and she took some of our bigger stuff we do, like a quarterly newsletter, making sure that we're getting the stuff in a timely fashion, and it gets sent to our communication subcommittee, who's going to do what.
Right.
And everybody feels like, so now, and I was telling in my group that I got a lot of pushback at first. Everybody's very hesitant, like, oh, she's just being really pushy, but they're very grateful because now at this point, everybody's like, I can now know what the expectation is. I feel like I'm contributing. And when we do a call out for volunteers or have someone express an interest, it's very clear. Yeah, you're going to spend 5 hours a month as a volunteer. And we got it whittled down to where I can confidently say, it's not going to eat up all your time, 2 to 5 hours a month, and you're going to make a difference.
That's awesome. And that's also in my book. When you're asking people to help, make sure that you have a job description, and also make sure that you have an accurate amount of time it's going to take them to do the job. So I'm glad that y'all are doing that.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay, and the last hand I see raised here is James, and then we're going to move on into the second part.
Yeah, I'll be quick. The main thing that I think that we said was, or that we talked about, is the fact that the two actually work really well together. One of them gives you a high level idea of here's who our audience is and how we need to, the messages that we need to get to them. The other one, the plan actually takes it and allows you to actually plan ahead and say, here's what we're going to send to them and when, and and who's responsible for getting that out. So the two really do go well together and work well together.
Good. That's what I designed them for. So thank you. That makes me feel better to know that other people see that too. Okay. So the next thing we're going to move to is the engagement piece, which I call what's programming got to do with it. Of course, programming has everything to do with it. And so I just have here listed some examples of some internal and external programming. I'm sure that many of you have done some, maybe, you've done all of these, but these are just some examples from ERGs that I've worked with over the years, of some things that they have done. Fortunately, now that COVID is kind of, well, maybe unfortunately, just kind of a part of our lives now, people are going back to doing these socials and happy hours and, joint events and things that, some of them they can do in person. A lot of people have gone completely virtual, or some people have those hybrid combinations. But whatever you do, just make sure that it's working for whatever audience that you have. So these are some community events that I've known about that have been really effective, and I think they're really cool. An LGBTQ plus ERG partnering with the AIDS Life Cycle to create a team to ride and raise money. So that is an event where, of course, the group is being part of the community and helping the community. There was a women in tech group that I worked with who partnered actually with their regional Girl Scout troop to create a technology badge. And it was actually a lot easier than a lot of us thought it was going to be. And it was very well received, not just by the Girl Scouts overall, but also by the girls. They really liked this and enjoyed it, and were happy to have the opportunity to, be able to get a technology badge, which kind of aligns with a lot of work that is going on, not only in women's ERGs, but also women's tech ERGs, but also within organizations where girls who code and things like that. And then there was a Black professionals group. They actually partnered with a local high school to offer resume writing tips and mock job interviews. They also then went and partnered with a local community college to offer these same type of things, especially with the mock job interviews, because a lot of times when people are getting out of college, they might not have the opportunity to have any mock job interviews. And that can be so important, especially if folks are doing job interviews virtually. ERGs can help those folks be able to learn how to do those virtual interviews, and it can be really helpful for folks in hopefully getting a job. So these are some ways that ERGs, BRGs can help support communities. And then these internal events that I have here, tabling events, I recommend those kinds of things. You can do them virtually or you can do them in person if you have a centralized location. Those are things where all ERGs can come together and have information about their ERGs and BRGs and what they do, and then how people can join. And I've seen this done as virtual networking type of thing, where kind of like what we're doing today, where you have people have opportunities to go into the different rooms for the different ERGs. And it's been very successful in recruiting new members, and also just getting the word out about what ERGs are overall to the organization, and how the ERGs are set up and how they can help, and then of course how you can join. And of course, most people celebrate diversity months and days. There are lots of them out there. I do have a tool in my workbook that I worked with folks in the UK and also on an international basis to try to list as many of the diversity months and days as possible, so that it wouldn't just be an America-centric or US-centric list, so that we were actually looking at least into Europe as far as those months and days go. But those are very important to celebrate. And if you are a global company, I think it's very important that you are including those global diversity months and days within your celebrations, because what I hear a lot of from ERGs is, especially if it's a global company, I'll hear from folks who are not within the US, and they're like, every time I come to something, it's not a good time for me. So they're not scheduling things to take into account the time difference. Also, the things that are celebrated don't really apply to me because I don't live in the United States. So keeping those kinds of things in mind as you're putting together those internal events for your company are very important. And last but not least, the courageous conversations. If you haven't had those within your company, I suggest you look at an outside facilitator to come in and do these at least for the first time. But these are opportunities for ERGs and perhaps leadership of your company to have what some people will call tough conversations, but to have conversations about things that are top of mind for people, but a lot of people consider it like the elephant in the room. It's not something we're going to talk about at work. But these can be very impactful in not just for members of your ERGs, because they can be extremely impactful for members of your ERGs. I remember one that we had for the LGBTQ plus ERG that I was co-leading. And we had an executive of the company who told the story about his allyship. And he actually told the story about a roommate that he had in college who was gay, and he felt like he was supportive, but his roommate ended up several years down the road committing suicide. And he began to think about how he could have been a better ally and have been more supportive. And it was such an impact on that audience, and not only members of the community, but also on those allies that were there, talking about the importance of allyship. So courageous conversations can be incredibly impactful. This company, and I'm going to go through this really quickly, but this company, Equinix, did an event where they were a global company. They had 6 time zones. They had an event that they put together that was over a 24-hour period. They had 6 ERGs, or have 6 ERGs. Each one took at least one segment over the 24 hours. It was really focused on celebration, and this was done around the theme of Black Lives Matter and allyship for Black folks, and how this organization wanted to support not only their Black colleagues, but also other colleagues that are historically excluded. And so again, it was for 24 hours. There were people, and the CEO of the company did a session on yoga. And everybody was just blown away that the CEO actually took on a session. What was most impactful about this is some folks actually stayed on this Zoom for 24 hours because they were so engaged in what was happening. And the comments afterwards were, I've never felt so engaged. I've never felt so much a part of a company than I feel with Equinix now that they've done this event. So they put this together in 2 weeks. I don't recommend you do that, but this is just an example of something that you can do or think about doing to include your global teammates. So I'd like to hear from you. As I'm hearing from you, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the last tool that I'm going to give you access to if you want it. But in the chat box, if you can just put a program or an event that your ERG has done that's been really successful, that you think other ERGs could potentially do, that would be awesome. And while you're doing that, the last tool, which for some reason this doesn't want to go, my internet's slow. I'm going to skip through that piece. Vetting your speakers is really important. Just some tips here: getting a copy of their presentation, making a schedule with them so you can meet with them beforehand, making sure they're familiar with technology. Please make sure they're familiar with technology. Do a dry run if you can, and make sure that you know how your speaker is going to engage with your audience. And I have a not so good story about that, but I'll save that for another time. The last tool here is what I call ERG Event in the Box. And so this is simply a checklist. Again, the copy that you will get is editable, but this is to help your group, your team that is maybe doing an event, to think through all the things that need to be done prior to the event. So I have this set up as 90 days out, 60 days out, 30 days out, 2 weeks out, 1 week out, the day before and the day of the event. I also recommend after you finish an event that you have a day after event or maybe week after the event to figure out what went well, what didn't, what changes you want to make. But this is simply a checklist and it's a reminder and it's editable. The good thing about using something like this is once you use it for an event and you can make notes on it, then you can have it going forward so that if you do the event again, you will know everything you did, when you did it, what worked, and you can update it after the event so that you can make the next event you do even better. So I'm going to check in the chat feature. Oh, thank you, Susan. A successful idea was Pride. They had receptions at different locations at their hospitals. This let them highlight both community members and allies at each location. That's fantastic. I love that idea. Doing external Pride events across all of the service territories. New Zealand, I just went there, sorry. New Orleans Pride Parade, partnering with Habitat for Humanity's Pride Build. I love it. Central Arkansas Pride, Woodlands Pride, yay, Woodlands Pride. MS Capital City Pride, various Pride related 5Ks. That's awesome. So just really doing stuff across the area where your folks are. Okay, I think that's the last comment. Thanks for sharing those. I really appreciate that. And there is a link. So if you want soft copies of the first 2 tools, the communication tools, and you want a soft copy of this, please just go to that link and fill out the information and put Greater Houston LGBTQ Pride in the message, and I will know what I need to send you. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to stay for a few minutes after. Ryan, if that's okay.
Sure, I'll just read it into the recording that your website is inclusivespaces.com.
Actually, it's inclusive space, just
space, yes.
yeah.
Thank you. Inclusivespace.com. And if you go to inclusivespace.com/contact, they can reach out to you, like you mentioned. And for folks that are dropping off, this will be on our YouTube page, but we're glad to stay on and have some questions if folks would like.
Thanks, everybody. I really appreciate you being here. And if I can help you in any way, please let me know.